Well, it's Friday and time for another reflection of my journey. The purpose of these reflections is to learn how to open our lives to the spiritual components of life events. I've lived to be 81 years old, and looking back, I see that in almost everything that happened to me, if I look for it, there was a spiritual lesson, something to be learned. Today, I want to tell you about a lesson I learned because of this watch. Years ago, I pastored a church, and the adult Sunday school class gave me this watch as a birthday present. It was very special to me. In those days, I was active in aviation, and I used it in flying because it has a stopwatch on it. And I cherish the watch because of the kind gesture of these people who love me and people that I love so much. Well, a number of years after that, and at another church in another state, we went on a vacation, a camping vacation, and I went to take a shower at the public bathhouse and hung this watch on a nail, took my shower, got dressed, headed back to my tent, the campsite, and realized I left my watch. I went back immediately, and the watch was gone. And nobody turned it into the office. We asked several people around us if they'd seen it, and nobody had seen it. Well, because the watch meant so much to me, I grieved and grieved over a number of years. Finally, we moved to another state, and Mary and I would go to a big flea market in Nashville, Tennessee, and I would go to vendors who sold used watches and antiques and ask them if they had a watch by the name of a North Star, and they all would say never heard of it, never have seen one. It wasn't in the book, the antique book. And I kept looking over a number of years and grieving over the loss of the watch, and it just couldn't seem to get over it because it was so special to me. Finally, I came to this point. I said, Lord, I don't want to carry the burden of the loss of that watch anymore, and I want to give it to the person who took it. So I'm giving it to them. I'm letting it go. I'm surrendering it, the whole deal, to you. Went for several years without looking anymore, thinking about it. And we go back to the flea market, not to look for a watch, but at some other things. And I walk in the building, and right in front of me is a vendor who has used watches, old watches of all kinds. And so I asked him, I thought it won't hurt, I'm not grieving anymore, but have you ever heard of a North Star watch? Do you have one? He said, no, I don't have one. Never heard of one, but a man was in here a few minutes ago, and he had one, and he said he wanted to sell it, and said he would be back in a few minutes. So I decided to wait. Excuse me. So I waited, and the guy came back, and he had this watch, just like is a North Star, same band, same face, same everything. The only one I've ever seen before or since, North Star. We talked, and I didn't want to accuse him of being the one that took it. I just negotiated a price, and I would have paid him more for it than he asked. And I bought it back, and I was so glad to get it. Well, what lesson is there in this? It's really about surrender. We often think of surrender as a negative thing, and it can be. But the issue is, who do you surrender to, and what are you surrendering? To surrender to Jesus is a good thing. To let go of things that burden us, that try to control our lives, that make us miserable. To give that to Jesus is a good thing. I'm always looking for just one person today. That's what I prayed about. I don't know if it's you or someone else, but I'm not trying to get a big crowd. I'm just looking for one person. And somebody out there today has things in your life that you need to surrender. You know, you've carried it long enough. You've dealt with the pain and the loss and the guilt long enough. You need to just let it go. Surrender it to Jesus. And if you do, you'll find a great peace. I remember when I gave the watch away that I didn't worry about it anymore. It was gone. It's amazing to me that God gave it back to me after I surrendered it. What a blessing it is to know that what we put in God's hands is in good hands. And I challenge you today, if you're carrying things that are weighting you down and making life miserable, that what you need to do is just give it to Jesus and let it go. What a wonderful privilege. He invites us to do that, every one of us, and you can do it too. There's a story in the Bible about surrender. There's a young boy who had a few fish and a couple of biscuits. I think of them as sardines. And Jesus asked the disciples to feed the crowd, and they looked around, and that's all they could find. And this young boy surrendered his food, his sardines and his biscuits. And Jesus took them and blessed them and fed the whole crowd, and he got to eat too. That's the miracle of giving things to Jesus, of putting it in his hands. My prayer today for you, whoever you are, God bless you, is that what you've carried for too long, what has been heavy on your heart for too long, what you've dealt with that you have no answer for, you can't do anything about it anyway, that today, this will be the day you say, Jesus, I'm surrendering it to you. I'm letting it go. If you'll do that, you'll find a peace and a joy that only God can give. I love you. Have a great day. And remember, God is teaching you about life from the events of your life. Open your heart to what he has to say. Amen.